Hi, I'm Gillian and welcome to the show. I offer spiritual growth for the rebel soul, guiding you through the labyrinth of your own ascension path. This show is for the rebel souls that challenge the status quo, those that crave authenticity in every single aspect of their lives, that desire to embrace their uniqueness, follow their passions, connect to their soul, and live according to who they truly are, even if that means having the courage to go against the grain or the norms of society. If that's you, my spiritual soul seeker, rebel warrior, then this is the place for you. On this podcast, we speak about everything from spirituality, sexuality, conscious relationships, business, and literally everything in between. So if that's your jam, then stay tuned. And go on, be a rebel and subscribe. You know you want to. So guys, I am actually so excited that I have my very first guest on my podcast. I just wanted to introduce everyone to the amazing Hayley Lloyd. Hi, Hayley, and welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited that I'm your first guest.
I know that's accolade right there for the first guest.
I'll be putting that on my CV.
So, do you want to give my listeners a bit of an overview of you, your journey, and why we're even talking?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my name's Hayley and I own an online business. I'm a seven-figure authority and business mentor. And I specifically help people to sign high-end clients, build in-demand authority through a blend of inner authority work and outer authority work. And this is something that I've grown over the past 4 years now, almost 5 years, and it's grown to be a seven-figure business. And Gillian is one of my incredible clients inside of the house. And it's just been incredible to see all of the shifts that we've been making. And we have just like connected on such a soul level because we're both very spiritual beings. If you are enjoying Gillian's world, then you'll know that she is like Queen of Spirit. And it's just been like such a sisterhood relationship where I just feel like we just get each other. We both are currently, or were, I was in Sydney, but we're both in Australia. We're both Brits that have moved over. So we have a lot in common. So I think this is going to be a really, really cool chat, just to chat for all things like spirit, because spirit is like a really, really big part of my business. It basically helped to formulate all of the stuff that I teach on authority. A big part of that was channeled. And yeah, I'm excited to chat with you about it today.
Amazing. Yeah. And the synchronicities, like just to give some context of how I ended up in Hayley's world, I found her on Instagram and I saw literally one of her posts. I found out she used to work at Canva. And again, the signs and synchronicities with my old recruitment business. My team used to recruit for Canva. So I was like, tick, tick. I just got her vibe of one post. I didn't even read her sales page, honestly, for her program, The House. And I was like, cool, it's just,
Sign me up.
it
Yeah.
set me up. Yeah. It was just like that inner knowing of just trusting the energy, trusting the vibe, the context of the spirituality, the marketing, the business. Um,
Mm.
so with that in mind, I obviously just had that gut feeling, right? And I followed that
Mm.
intuition, had the signs and synchronicities, the little dabblings of the commonalities there that just made it a fuck yes for me. What's
Mm.
been a real turning point for you where something like that has happened, where you've followed those breadcrumbs, you've had that intuitive like nudge and you've gone, it's the one, it's the right
Oh,
direction.
gosh, that's such a good question. There's two that's coming to mind. First one was actually when I moved over to Australia.
Mhm.
So that was a really big, intuitive, scary leap that I took. And, I'm sure that you experienced probably something very similar when you were moving over as well. But um, I was very set up in the UK. I had all of my friends there. I was very grounded. My family's there. I had a full roster of clients. I had my own design agency. But because I had my own business, I also had quite a bit of freedom. And there was just this one day, this person that I was friends with, she met me at a pub and she was talking to me about her background. And she was like, oh, yeah. So I then just decided to move to Australia. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I'm like actually half Australian. I've got an Australian passport. So I'm just going to go back. And I was like, oh my God, like I've always wanted to move to Australia. My uncle is actually living in Australia, weirdly just down the road from me now. And we never really had like a super close relationship, but I had always had the seed planted of like Australia is going to be a place for you. And she, at the end of the conversation, just invited me. She was like, "Do you want to come and stay with me for 6 weeks?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure." So I came for 6 weeks and absolutely loved it, and came home and basically booked my flight. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. I don't have a job. I don't have money. I don't have a way of doing this. I don't know what I'm going to do because you can't stay over there without like a job visa. So I needed a job visa. And all of these little synchronicities just started happening where it was like the universe just allowed this waterfall of like synchronicities and luck or universal support, spirit support, where everything just started slotting into place. And number one was Canva. I said, I had a very in-demand portfolio for my design work. I was specifically in user experience and user interface design. And I used to do a lot of contract work. And I said the only company that I would go back to full-time work for would be Canva and this other company called Us Too. And I was like the only ones that I would go back to, but they weren't hiring at the time. And as I came back and I had just booked my flight and I was going through job applications, there was one for a digital designer at Canva. And I was like, I'm sorry. And it was like for my level, I literally applied and I got my first interview, which I did in the UK. Now I hadn't secured the job yet because there's quite like a lengthy, interview process where you have to basically do like a design task and blah, 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 being in recruitment, how long that process can be. And so I basically went, I didn't have a place to stay because it had fallen through like last minute. I didn't have any work and the visa that I wanted to be on required me to have work. And so when I got over there, I remember, no, I was getting on the flight to go over and I arrived in Dubai and I remember saying, universe, please God, by the time that I land, please have found me a contract between when I would arrive and when I will be starting work at Canva. I was already saying like when I will start at Canva, like I'd already decided it was happening. And I ended up landing in Australia and I had received an email and it was for a contract for the exact length of time that was between when I arrived and when I was meant to be starting work at Canva. The very first day I had my in-person interview at Canva. I got accepted and they gave me and offered me the job basically the next day. And so it all just lined up perfectly, like one thing after the other. But it was just like this real gut knowing of like, this is just meant to happen. It was like such a strong feeling of this is being handed to me. I can't ignore this right now. So that's probably one of like the most profound ones that I think of. Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, I mean, you were really trusting your gut in that one, but I'm sure we've all been through the ringer when it comes to trusting our intuition, right? I know I have. There's been times where I've completely been disconnected from it in my lifetime, and it's led me very much down the garden path to lots of bad people, bad situations, and I'm just really curious to find out what's coming to mind for you, somewhere where you didn't trust yourself, where you didn't trust your intuition, where you actually realize now that you were being shown intuitive nudges, the way that you're picking up information and energy the way that you do, but at the time you didn't realize. And what was the consequence? What was the outcome for you?
Okay, this is a really good one. This is the manifestation story about my house, actually. And I think you know this
Yes,
one.
I know it. Yeah, so
But
good.
this is a good one. So last year, I started getting the pull that I didn't want to be in Sydney anymore. And I was like, I know this is going to be quite an upheaval. We've been here for 6 years. We're very settled. Our animals are here, like our whole lives are here. But when I get a knowing about something, I'm just like, it's a knowing. And I'm a Sagittarius, so I can move quite quickly. And so we started like looking for places to rent. And we ended up hiring this rental fairy, she was called. Didn't have the best experience, but we paid like an upfront fee, everything. So she was basically going to all of like the openings for us, and it was like meant to be like a guarantee. And at the time, the rent that we were experiencing in Sydney was just going up and up and up. And it was suddenly like, I'm getting like a ringing in my ear as I'm telling the story. It's so funny.
Mm.
That usually means my guys are with me. But
Yeah.
like, it was just going up and I was experiencing so much pressure. And I remember then I had a trip over to the States and I went on this trip and I was very like in the throes. We were applying to all of these places and I was just like, please God, give me something. Like, I am begging you. And I remember being there and I was so anxious the entire time that I was there, 2 weeks. I was like checking my phone all the time. The first thing I do as soon as I wake up, we're on different time zones, check in, like, has there been any news? No, like instant. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I know I'm meant to be moving there. We were initially looking at Sunshine Coast as well to move to. And we ended up applying to about 10 places. For every single one, we put in the highest offer that they received. We also agreed to pay upfront 6 months rent. For every single one, even the agent said, you will get this property. For every single place that we applied to, and every single place we did not get. And it was so frustrating. And I came to my knees when I was 2 days from coming home, and I literally set up this whole crystal ceremony. Like, I had all my tarot cards out. I did this manifestation ceremony. I was like crying at one stage. I was like, please God, just let me move. I want to go. Like, why is this not working? And did that whole ceremony and still didn't get anything. And I was just like, what the hell? Ended up coming back to Sydney. And they were like, we're really sorry. You literally haven't got anywhere. We'll just start the process again. And I was just like, this is exhausting. What's going to happen? And then that very day, I got a message when I got back saying, hey, Hayley, have you thought about buying? And it was from like this wealth advisor that I'd been working with. And I was like, well, I only have 1 year of financials in Australia, despite my business having operated in the UK for a while. And he was like, yeah, but we have a connection where we can, based on 1 year of financials, because they're very good, we can actually get you a mortgage. And I was like, what? And so within 1 day, then suddenly everything pivoted to, oh, okay, we're now no longer going to rent, we're going to buy. And so literally and it was the day that I got back, and it was like, oh my God, okay, this is wild. Clearly this has been a redirection. So we actually stopped looking for rentals and we started flying down to Sunshine Coast. And then the more that we went down to Sunshine Coast, the more that we realized this isn't the place that we want to be. This is so sleepy. Like, this is like, there's nothing going on here. And we started coming to the Gold Coast. Yeah. And I started realizing, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. This is where I'm meant to be. So like all of those signs, despite everything that I thought that I wanted, the universe was like, honey, that is not where you are meant to be. And was like redirecting me again and again and again and again. And actually even finding this property was like a wild manifestation story. So when we first started looking, I saw this property and we just like off a whim, we're in Australia, came to view the house. I fell in love with it. I was like, this is the house for me. We put in an offer, it was rejected. And we were like, oh my God, I was heartbroken. But I basically took a photo of the property and printed it out, put it on my vision board. And so I was doing all of these manifestation ceremonies again, and I did like this.
I'm naked.
Yeah, literally. I was like, Princess Vibes, help me manifest this house. And I even did this mushroom ceremony, and this is an interesting story. I did this mushroom ceremony, and I tuned into just like the energies that were around me at the time. And one of the energies that came through was gnome energy, and I'd never experienced gnome energy. And they basically said, we're helping you with this house. This is going to be a weird manifestation journey for you, but just know that we're laying all of the pieces to give you exactly what you want. And I remember seeing them so clearly and just feeling so supported. And when I researched afterwards, like I've done like a lot of shamanic training, and often gnomes will help like people with shamanic roots with grounding down and finding their location and stuff. And I didn't know anything about gnomes at the time. So I had that experience, and then was still very confused because I could not find anywhere that was like this place. And every single place that we went to, I was just like, it's just not the same. Like, I just want this place so much, and I just feel like it's perfect. It has every single thing. And what was so interesting, on my manifestation wish list, I had like, you know, I want this to close very quickly. I don't want to be in competition with anyone. I want to literally just kind of like slot in and for it to be a seamless process. And, you know, I then wanted an out studio. I wanted a pool, like all of these things. It was like a big ask. And they were like, I think you're going to have to sacrifice on something. And I was like, yeah, I think I probably am. Anyway, so went through this whole journey. And then on the 24th of February, we ended up, or was that when we closed? Maybe it was a week before. I got a call, and it was our buyer's agent. And he was like, they've pulled out. The house is still on the table. By the way, for 3 months, everyone had said, Hayley, take it off your vision board. You've got to let it go. You've got to let this go. And I kept on being like, this or something better, this or something better. Yeah. And they said if you can slot in at the price that they have put down, they will accept your offer and you'll have to move though in a month. So there's no competition with anyone else. It happens incredibly quickly. And so literally that day, like it was above our asking price, but we just scattered. We were just like, we will find this money. And so we just went to the ends of the earth, like found money in places, like manifested all of this money basically.
Yeah.
And then like a couple of days later, we were like, yep, we're doing it. A week later, on the 24th of January, was when everything closed. It was like a vortex of manifestation. I also had a huge lump sum of money. Like I have investments in other things, and we were basically allowed to draw down from our investments, which was completely unexpected on the 24th as well. We were sitting on row 24 of the plane on the 24th of January in 2024. And it was like everything just came. Like we signed the house on that day. It was officially ours. This huge windfall of money just came through. And suddenly it was just like, you are fully supported and you're going to move in, but you're going to have to move in a month. And so we literally then moved in on the 24th of February, 1 month exactly to the date later. And we moved over. And so all of those, that pain and that anguish was a redirection to something the gnomes were helping.
Yeah. And with that, what's like the biggest lesson there that you've now, like, you recognize the redirection now? Do you recognize redirection when you're being redirected?
Yes, it was a huge lesson around that. And I definitely realized everything happens for a reason, even if I can't see it. And I think that's a generator issue, especially if you're a generator in human design or manifesting generator. We cannot see what's happening sometimes when we're experiencing it. And it really, really taught me to trust that like there is always a reason, even if it's painful, even though it makes no sense, even if it's the complete opposite thing of what I want to happen, there is always a reason somewhere. And even if it's going to be in 6 months' time, a year time, you can't conceptualize it right now, but in the future, you'll be able to look back and be like, okay, that needed to happen that way. Like if we had got those rentals and been in Sunshine Coast, we would have been in the wrong location and we wouldn't have bought this property. And the great thing is we got a reevaluation on this property 6 months later, and the market is just booming at the moment. So we've already made a huge amount of money on this property by just living in it. And so it really does just go to show like there is always a reason. So whenever those periods now come up, I'm able to be like, okay, there's a reason I'm being redirected here for sure.
And is there any way that you get those intuitive nudges, like you know that this is a redirection, or do you just have to go through the process and be like, you know what, if things aren't working out the way that I want them to, I just have to let go and surrender?
That's such a good question. Let me think about that. I think when I experience pain around something that I want, I think I now know I've experienced a lot of pain in my life. And I think I've now got to the stage where I understand that if I'm experiencing a certain amount of pain or discomfort, or I really want something and I'm not getting it, that's usually a sign to me that I'm missing something. And I can never tell what it is at the time. And a lot of people think that pain is wrong and that it means something's wrong. But for me, it actually means that I'm onto something, but I'm not sure what it is. So honestly, it's probably pain. It's like my desire not being fulfilled means that I'm missing something or that something's coming. And so I'd say it's probably pain.
Yeah.
Which is annoying.
And the fact that my photo just fell down at the same time.
Right?
We were looking at the camera and I was like, oh, that was a huge confirmation. It's like the pain, because I just got shocked there. So it's like sometimes like that shock to our nervous system, the pain that we feel, the anxiety, all of those things that you were feeling. It's like, oh.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Like even literally just today, like it's been such a day of polarity where, you know, I've had some of like the most incredible conversations. I've like gone to different studios and stuff. And then I had this like weird, shocking moment where like I went into my bank account and everything had shut down. Like all of my business bank accounts were gone. Like all of my money was gone. Oh, what's going on?
Okay, guys, for context, I literally put these up today, so this is my fault.
Yeah. It's the vibration of the conversation. It's like we can't handle it.
Literally, it's like off we go.
Yeah. But yeah, all of the money was suddenly gone, and I had this like moment of like, whoa, okay, what's happening here? How am I going to respond to this? Because like if this was me 2 years ago, I would have gone into a meltdown. And so I just had to like take some deep breaths, and like I really felt like it was a test of like, how are you going to respond? Because this is going to dictate the rest of your day. And I felt pain. Like waiting on hold for them to come through, not knowing what's going on. Like, have I been scammed? Have I been hacked? Has something happened? Everything's fine now. It's actually a very simple fix, completely my fault. But it was that moment of like, there's something here for you to learn. There's something here, whether this is a redirection, whether this is a lesson that you need to learn, or whether this is a deep appreciation for what you have. Like, be so grateful. You know what's funny? We actually had a meeting straight after that about an investment property. And so I came into that call on such a good mood. Like I came in such a high because I was like, I'm so grateful right now that I have access to the money that I've spent so hard. Like you can sometimes get complacent, and sometimes something like that shocks you into like, oh, be so grateful for what you have right now. Because if it's gone, like imagine if it's gone, what does that mean? It's like one moment of spiraling like that and feeling that shock in your body, and it reframes everything for you. So I'm grateful for that experience now, even though it was very painful at the time.
And it's like you've been, even with the house and the money, those are two things that impact our deepest fears, which is safety, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like we don't have money, we can't survive. If we don't have a roof over our head, we can't survive. So it's
Yeah.
like it was really playing into like the deepest fears that we can have, which is death, right? And I know
Yeah.
that sounds um grandiose, but ultimately that's where our brain goes, right?
Yeah, 100%. The deepest, darkest fear that it always comes down to is like, what if I die? That's our child brain, always.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of feelings that come up specifically around like scarcity and money and anything that's kind of like involved in those, like even moving. A lot of these are really big things,
Yeah.
and a lot of redirections are often big things, and they can happen in, your love life, they can happen with money, they can happen with jobs, security, all of those things. They say in order to have a stable life, you need to have good, a stable home, stable job, and a stable, what's the last one? A stable
Friends, isn't it? Like cult
friend.
support around you.
Yeah, what was the first one that I said?
Stable home, stable job.
Ah, no, yeah, stable home, stable relationships, and
Yeah.
stable job. So it's like those three. And
And money.
even one of those like is slightly off, then it topples everything. Because if you don't have a stable job, then you don't have wealth, you don't have money coming in. If you don't have relationships, that means that you're going through a breakup or something. If you don't have your home, that means that you're literally like moving around all over the place. You don't have that security. And those things are our primal needs. They're just things that as human beings we need. But most things, whenever we get a shock to the nervous system, it's stimulating one of those three areas. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
Yeah. I always say as well, like redirection or loss or change can be the catalyst for our highest growth. So it's like it really depends which way you look at it. I know for me,
Mm,
any breakup, for example, or any move has always been for my highest growth, my highest spiritual growth, any job change, whatever that is, even moving house, even if it's like so unexpected that you have to move house and you don't, you're not ready to move house or you don't think you're ready to move house, it's for a bigger reason. And you speak
mm-hmm.
about it a lot. It's like sometimes a move is to help you move to a new space that gives you more expansion. It's like the ability to hold more energy. Even as simple as just moving your furniture around, move, change. It's yeah. What's your mantra around shifting and moving in relation to expanding your capacity to hold more?
That the universe will always give you exactly what you need to grow. And the universe won't ever give you anything that you're not ready for. Like if you are in a place where you're going through a lot of hardship, you're going through a lot of pain, it's because you're being primed for something bigger. And so you have two choices in those moments. You can either be a victim to it and not get any of the lessons or any of the wisdom, or you can surrender to it and allow it to integrate into you and make you someone different. And most of the world goes into victim. And I totally appreciate that people go through really, really hard things. I've been through hard things in my life. Like I've had 2 counts of sexual assault. I've had an ectopic pregnancy, like really, really traumatic things that, you know, I had PTSD for a while. For a long time, I was in victim about those things. And for many years, I was remained triggered. And I didn't talk to anyone about it either, but remained a victim to those things. They were really hard. They were really painful. And when they did eventually resurface as PTSD triggers, it's because I was ready. I was finally ready to do it. I'd stopped drinking alcohol, so I was stopping numbing myself. And then suddenly everything came back up like a whirlwind. And I needed to look at all of those things and change myself. Within 5 years, I went from when I was in my corporate job, severely socially anxious, could not have a conversation in front of more than two people without having a panic attack. I would just berate myself inside of my mind. You're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid, over and over and over again. I wouldn't be able to think of anything creative. Having this conversation would have been impossible because I wouldn't have had any original thoughts. I thought I was stupid. I thought I was ugly. I thought that everyone hated me. I didn't think that I was good for anything. And I was an alcoholic. And so I was stuck in this mentality of being addicted to chaos and being addicted to pain. And when I decided to go on this journey and heal the root causes of the social anxiety and all the things that I was experiencing and really sitting in the pain, because healing does require you sitting in pain. And it's the most unfortunate part about about all of this is that it does require us to go through this journey of transmuting pain and turning it into our purpose. But in 5 years, because I've done so much sitting in the pain, is why I'm now here, able to build a seven-figure business, able to have conversations like this with you, able to have a huge amount of impact around the world, not just in Australia or in the UK, but like I touch the lives of so many people just like you do because of the healing that I've done. And I truly believe that every single human being has come to this planet to transmute pain and turn it into purpose. Like I do believe that. I don't believe we've come here to have an easy life. I'm sorry. I believe that we've come here to feel. And that is the purpose of the human experience, is to experience the depths of where the human experience can take us. There's so much wisdom in pain that people try to avoid, they try to suppress. And in doing that, they remain a child version of themselves throughout their entire lives. And I don't think that that is the meaning of life. I think the meaning of life is for us to feel, is for us to truly feel so that we can integrate, so that we can grow, so that we can become someone else. And if we aren't willing to do that, then we're kind of defeating the point of life. Like if we're trying to avoid pain at all cost, if we're trying to avoid feeling, like when you numb the bad, you also numb the good. So like I experience the depths of the pain, but I also experience the high of the good, of the gratitude. I get to experience both. But there was a stage where I didn't, where I was numb to all emotions, good and bad, because I turned off the bad because they were so painful that I also didn't feel the good. So I just felt numb.
Mm-hmm.
So going through and healing through PTSD and a lot of these like traumas was incredibly painful, but allowed me to really also develop a really, really strong spiritual connection where like without that pain, I wouldn't have connected with my guides. I wouldn't have connected with my ancestors. Like I sometimes feel like the stronger that the strongest my team is when I'm experiencing the most pain. I get the most signs when I'm struggling. And like they are just stronger then because they want you to feel their presence. And it was through the pain that I started this entire spiritual journey, and that it cracked me wide open. And I also see healing and spirituality as the same thing. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that our spiritual journey is our healing journey.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And there's a beautiful quote. It's something like healing isn't just to transmute pain, it's to expand our capacity to feel more love, more joy, more bliss. And it's true. It's like you said, it's like for most people have gone through some kind of trauma in their life, passed down through their ancestors, through past lives, and it just numbs us. We just close ourselves down and we create this ego, we create this mask, and it's not
Mm,
authentically who we are. And
mm,
yeah, a lot of the journey of healing is to come back to our true self, which is a soul, which is a spiritual being that's having a human experience. So it's like
mm.
when we can start to traverse and see the world like that, it's just so many things open up for us. Um,
Yeah.
and with that, obviously, you are very connected to your guides and the spiritual piece. What is the most craziest thing that you'd be like, nobody would believe me if I told you when it comes to spirituality or something you've experienced or something paranormal? Because, I've had my fair share, obviously, but I love to understand what everyone else has seen,
Let's
experienced, felt.
Oh
Be
my God,
yeah.
let's share stories right now because I'll do one, then you do one. This
Okay.
is my favorite thing. It's
So
like we're at
many.
a sleepover. Okay, let me think. Which one do I want to share? There's so many.
No.
Um, okay, let me
Let's
think.
start with what's one that was we'll do one that was scary, one
Okay,
that was like extremely catalytic, um,
okay,
or one that was just like
all
when you
right,
felt the most love or support, because I
okay,
think they fall into potential batches.
cool. Yeah, I've got three. Okay,
Yeah.
let's start with a scary one then. So when I was this was when I first stopped drinking alcohol, actually. And when I was a child and I was growing up, I used to have a lot of very vivid dreams to the point that my parents actually took me to the doctors about it because they were like, there's something wrong with her brain. Like she feels like she's living her dreams. And I wake up, I can remember the dreams went on for hours. And it's so weird. I used to have these commercials, right? And the commercials was a spider's web with dew in it and frozen peas. And it was the same every single time. And it would like go and then into the next dream. So I'd have about 5 a night. They were so lucid. I experienced every single one. I felt pain. I felt all of it. And I can remember everything down to like, I would like zoom in. It's like I was living it, but also experiencing every single detail at the same time. So I could know what color thread you had in your top, and I have an image of like the red thread on like a blue suit because I could remember that level of detail. So when it was a beautiful dream, like I was flying, I was doing all these things, but when it was scary, it was really, really scary. And I kind of learned around that age that it's not safe for you to do these things. So my parents kind of reinforced that. And at 16, all of my dreams stopped. And that's just it. I didn't really dream again. And then I started drinking and, again, numbing, numbing, numbing. And all of that like ability or capacity kind of just turned off at that age, which is now I've heard a very pivotal age for whether, that stays open and you get to really grow it or whether it shuts down. And mine definitely shut down. So when I stopped drinking, I started doing a little bit more healing work. I started getting slightly more curious about everything that was going on in the universe. And I remember I started getting the sleep paralysis that would terrify me. And, sleep paralysis, you wake up in the night and there's something like on your chest and you can't move and you can't scream, but you know that something's there and it's just like watching you. And they're terrifying because you can't do anything but like just wait for it to be over, like try to move a finger so that then you can like roll over, and it's so real. And there was this one time that I was having a nap, and they'd usually always be naps actually where you wouldn't go like that deep. And I was having a nap and I came round and I was paralyzed, and I knew that I was paralyzed, but I was kind of like still asleep, and I was like watching the room kind of warp. It was like I was on mushrooms, but I'd never experienced mushrooms at the time. And I was watching the room warp. And then I saw a figure walk into the room, and the figure came over and hovered over me and then kissed me on the cheek. And I like felt it like kissing me on the cheek. And in my mind, I was just like, was that Tom? Like, was that Tom? That must have been Tom because like he's right there. He's just touched my cheek and he's just standing there. Well, I couldn't really move and I was really disorientated and I was really confused. And I just assumed that it was Tom, but it was kind of like warping in and out. And it was almost like I had vertigo and I was kind of like, and I felt really like starting to feel nauseous. And eventually ended up being able to like move out of it. And I went around the house like looking for Tom, like being like, Tom, where are you? Why did you just leave? And I called him up and I was like, Tom, why did you just leave? I was convinced it was him because it was so real. There was someone in my room and they were watching me when I was sleeping and they had just kissed me on the cheek. And he called him up and he was just like, I haven't been home for 4 hours, Hayley. And we both freaked. And he was like, check all of the cupboards. Because our only thinking was like, there has to be someone in the house. So
Yeah.
like I went on a rampage. I like went through all of the cupboards. Like I was terrified. And I was just like, there is something in this house. Something was here with me. And eventually ended up calming down. And I spoke to a psychic about it. And they were just like, this was a sleep paralysis and you have someone visiting you, whether that's good or bad, it doesn't matter. But this is only going to, your light is getting brighter and this is only going to get worse.
Mhm.
And so she gave me some protection, like things to do before bed, and then they stopped happening. But I have found that if I forget to do it at night, I will have a sleep paralysis and I will experience really, really dark stuff sometimes. And they're fucking terrifying. So that's one of my scary ones. What about you? Scary story now.
Oh my God, there's so many. Obviously, as you can imagine, like I said, the more that you tune in, the more that you awaken your psychic gifts, it's like your light becomes brighter and
Yeah.
you're just a beacon for everything. And
Mm-hmm.
like I say to everyone, there's light and dark energies and entities. So yeah, having proper protection is honestly so key and something I teach all of my students because they're extremely intuitive and
Mm.
you don't realize what's happening to them. But probably I would say the thing that's coming to mind is when I was 19, my best friend got killed. It was an event that I was supposed to be at on New Year's Eve, but something made me not go. Like I just had this intuitive knowing. I know that I was protected from seeing that because it was quite traumatic and quite horrific. And I was a very imaginative person anyway, so I was getting lots of visuals after it. And I remember being at uni at the time, and every night when I was going to sleep, she would be in my dreams. I would see her in the mirror. Maybe a week after the funeral, all of our friends got together for dinner. And there was like helium balloons in this restaurant. And me being the idiot that I am was doing like, the helium voices. Of course,
Yeah,
the idiot in the corner over here.
of course.
Of course. And then I took one home. So I was actually back in my parents' house at that point, and I just took one home and then just, put it in my room. So it was just kind of floating on the roof. I woke up maybe like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, just kind of woke up again, paralysis. And this balloon, like I was awake, I wasn't asleep still. I was awake, and this balloon was coming towards me with her face on it. Like with her actual face on
No.
it. I'm like pinned to the bed,
No.
sweating, like can't move,
Exit. Eject.
freaked out. So all of this stuff kept on happening to me, and I eventually realized that like we used to love scaring the shit out of each other. Like that was our thing.
Mm.
We were into psychics. We loved X-Files. I named her cat Mulder from the X-Files. Do you know what I mean? Like
Amazing.
we had like this sister connection,
Yeah.
um and we just loved to scare each other. Like when we had sleepovers, we would arrange for her brother to go and like light fire to the pavement and like
Stop.
scare all of our friends, and we'd be in on it. So like I knew that was at some point, eventually got there. I was like, okay, I know that you're scaring me for a reason. Like but also at the same time it was scared, but like such an appreciation that she was coming to tell me that she was okay. Like I just had a deep knowing that she was okay, and I felt so privileged because it's like there
Mm.
was no one else that was seeing or feeling her in this way, and it was really like a huge confirmation, a huge start of like my mediumship gifts.
Mm.
And then I actually went to a uni counselor at the time because I think because of the trauma from my previous trauma and then this trauma, it's when we have trauma, it's actually so close to the part of our brain that affects our short-term memory. So
Mm.
I would be in conversation at uni and I would just forget what I was saying, like mid-sentence,
Yeah.
mid-conversation, because my brain hadn't been able to process trauma or process emotions because I'd never learned to do that as a kid.
Yeah.
It was just bringing all of that up. And I
Mm.
actually went to this amazing, again, when like the universe just puts people in your world, and it's just, he was one of those. And
Mm.
his wife had just died. And he actually introduced me to an amazing psychic called Sylvia Brown. So I don't know if you know her books. She's dead now, but very eccentric, was on like the Maury show and stuff. This
Oh, cool.
gregarious American psychic medium that wrote loads of books on psychic kids and mediumship and signs from the afterlife. And he gave me this book around signs from the afterlife and how our loved ones show themselves to us. And I was like, fuck, it just made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was a terrifying yet catalytic experience for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I love that. I love that. All right, I'll give a catalyst one now.
Hmm.
So this one was one that actually started the entire, well, part of the movement behind feminine authority. So feminine authority is a concept that I'm known for. It's a very established now brand. It's trademarked and almost registered as like a term that I use. But when I first started using the term feminine authority, I hadn't had any like spiritual guidance. It just started like appearing. And then I was doing this meditation, and I was starting to create a program for Feminine Authority Manifestation School, which is about taking all of like my thinking around it, and I was downloading it into this program, and it's very much a channel program. But this one day I was doing this meditation, and I went really, really deep. I was doing a guided one, but I sometimes, if I'm, it's so funny with meditations, I'll either like follow it completely and have zero experience, or like something will just like take me on this journey that is like so profound and like out there that it's almost like hard to understand. And so anyway, at the time, I didn't know who like Mary Magdalene was or anything. I didn't really believe in like Jesus and like Mary Magdalene. I didn't believe in any of those things. I was just like, spirit guides, aliens, yay. And so I went on this journey, and this woman met me, and she was just this beautiful, incredible woman. She basically took my hand and she took me into this like other world, and she showed me this huge rose. And then I was watching a woman and a man basically dancing on this rose together, and I suddenly just felt this overwhelming feeling of like love, like to the point it brought me to tears. I was like sobbing at this point. I was like crying and crying because I just felt so much love. And she was like holding my face at the same time, being like, you're I'll always be with you now, I'll always be with you now. And I was like, okay, who are you? And she was just allowing me to like watch this union. And then I became her, and I was like dancing with this man, and I was experiencing like this completely unconditional love is the only way that I can describe it. It was like bring you to your knees kind of love. And I just felt this like divine connection with like the masculine, and like, and I was confused. I was just like, is this meant to be my partner? Like I'm in a relationship, like what's going on here? And didn't get any clarity there. And just as I was starting to come out, it was starting to fade. And I was just like, who are you? And I heard the word Mary. And I was like, oh, I've got a VA at the time called Marianne. And I was like, brilliant, just made that up. And just as I was like coming out, it just said Magdalene. And so I was like, okay, interesting. So I got out Google, bearing in mind I know nothing about Mary Magdalene at this point. I got up Google and I just put in Rose Mary Magdalene.
Mm-hmm.
And up came obviously Mary Magdalene of the Rose. But what was really interesting is she has a feast day, which is a national celebration of Mary Magdalene. And that was the day that it was. It was on the day of Mary Magdalene National Feast Day that she'd come through to me. And it was like, whoa, okay. So that was clearly actually her. And I got this very strong pull that I'd also been witnessing the love between her and Jesus. And I was just like, oh my God, is this real? Like, what the hell? So the next day I was like questioning myself. I was like, oh, is this real? Blah, blah, blah. And the next day she came through again. And this time she showed me, she was just like, she was like, you're part of the Mary Magdalene lineage. You know, you're a priestess in that lineage, essentially. And she was like, I want you to go and get something to always remind you of this experience, because I'm always going to be with you. And she showed me this small rose quartz crystal. And she was like, it looks like a little like pyramid cube thing. And she was like, it's going to be in a shop, Mineralism in Glebe. You're going to go there. There's going to be a parking spot directly outside the shop. And you're going to go into the back shelf, which wasn't where like the crystals used to be, because I knew the shop. She was like, it's going to be on this shelf. It's going to be in the middle of the shelf. You're going to pick it up. It's going to be the only one there that's that size. And you're going to bring it home. You need to use it in this hand. And so I was like, okay. So that day I ended up going to Mineralism and Glebe. The markets are on. And I was like, well, there's not a chance in hell I'll get a parking space, because it is rammed. There's just, you know, not really a chance. Anyway, I was driving past Glebe, and then as I drive past, this person just comes out directly outside Mineralism. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I just went straight into the spot, and I made a beeline as soon as I got in, straight to the back, and exactly where she said is where all of the rose quartz are. And I was going through all of the rose quartz, and there was like lots of different sizes. And there was one, and this is it right now, if you can see, and it's a rose quartz, basically a cube. that basically sits in my hand. And I picked it up. It was the only one there. It was sitting exactly where she said, and I bought it, and it just basically sits with me. A few months later, I met this woman, and I bought up Mary Magdalene for some reason, and she started like almost crying, and I was just like, what's wrong? And she was just like, I just went to the Church of Mary Magdalene this morning, and she showed me a picture, and Mary Magdalene had in this hand a rose quartz.
Diverse. Mm-hmm.
And it was like, whoa, oh my God, what is that? Like, it was so random. Anyway, so that's when I started becoming connected to her. But when I was filming the series about feminine authority, we had done so much information gathering about feminine authority, making sure there was no trademarks, making sure no one had used it. There was nothing. I'm talking nothing about this. Like, and so I went to Melbourne to basically film this short series about feminine authority as a topic. And as I was there and we were prepping, I was looking for a small definition of spiritual authority, which is like a concept that can kind of align with what inner authority is. And so me and my friend Erin, we were both researching, and she gets up this thing and she was just like, okay, this is so weird. She's like, I've done so much research. I've not found this. But she found this article that basically said feminine authority was a Mary Magdalene teaching.
Mm.
And we were like,
Shit.
whoa. And it was suddenly just this moment of like, oh, this was never my topic. This was never mine. Like, this was Mary Magdalene's, and she chose me. She chose me as a vessel for this to come through. And so that was just like this moment of like, holy shit, this is, I'm so privileged now. I'm so certain of what it is that I'm doing. And it just really solidified that path for me. So yeah, that's another
I've
one.
never heard that story. I absolutely love it. I literally was getting it ringing my ear. I'm getting all of my tingles of truth whenever you're saying that. So, so beautiful. And this is like the cool thing. It's like the stuff that comes through to us. Even with my clients, it's like everything you were saying, they've said. It's like, am I
Mm-hmm.
making this up?
Yep.
Like this just happened to me today, so am I just replaying this person's name? And then it gets validated because we
Yeah.
have the oracle that is Google, and all these things come up, and it's like happened to me so many times, and it's just like you can't fake it,
Yeah.
which
It's
is
so confusing. Have you ever done like psychedelics, like magic mushrooms or anything?
I've done mushrooms once, and I've done ayahuasca.
What were your spiritual experiences like using those? Did you have any crazy ones? Because I got a couple that I'll share.
So I did ayahuasca, God, 2014. So it was the year that I moved here, and I was invited by my past life regression therapist at the time. So I went to a psychic school. I met a past life regression therapist because I had this crazy past life thing come up in
Mm,
class, and then I met him, and we were just like kindred souls. And then I ended up being a client of his, and he invited me to this gathering, which there was maybe 10 people there, and there was this Peruvian shaman that had come over from Peru, so it was like a whole weekend thing. So we stayed there. It was like one night we did like the first initiation, and the second night we did the second initiation. Um, it was really interesting because when people ask me this, I can see why so many people have these profound experiences. But because
mm,
I was already having those, because I was training in doing all my psychic development, I was
mm,
doing all my readings, I was getting like insane visuals. Like I was very clairvoyant at the very start of my journey. So I was getting all of these insane visuals already. So when I came to do the ayahuasca journey, it was similar, but I can understand if people haven't had that experience, why it is so catalytic. Um,
mm-hmm,
the thing that I do remember though, it's like the first night, I was just getting a lot of pain. So my very first tattoos before I got all of these done, um,
mm,
were a lot like a couple on my back and my neck. And what grandmother was it grandmother ayahuasca or grandfather ayahuasca? Grandmother, was showing me, she was just taking me to those points of where I'd got tattooed in my very early years as pain points, and basically
mm.
where I had marked my pain on my body. So
Interesting.
the painful experiences of my trauma that I couldn't speak about, I'd actually tattooed them on me.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. And this is actually where I used to get physical pain as well, on those exact points, like
Mm,
the back of my neck, in between my shoulder blades, and like the two bottom bits of like the top of your bum, like bottom of your back. So yeah, that was
mm,
that was that was the profound thing probably from it, that knowledge around tattoos and how we mark our pain because we can't speak it. And I guess that's I've learned so much more about the way that I've tattooed myself and shifted from probably tattooing myself with a lot of unconscious trauma to actually creating something now that is very ritualistic. And when I do
Mhm.
get tattooed, that's how I show up. I bring my guides in, all the things. So yeah, that was really cool. And the second night was more of a celebration, but I think at that point I was just like, get me out of here.
Yeah, I eject. I want to leave this
Yeah.
place.
And especially if you
Oh
purge
my
as
God.
well. So I don't know if you purged. Did you do ayahuasca?
I I've not done ayahuasca.
Okay.
Like I've felt the pull at times, but there's always been something kind of stopping me, and I'm not entirely sure. And I think ayahuasca is one of those things that you've got to be really sure before you do it, because it definitely can surface a lot. Like if you're not ready for it, and with ma magic mushrooms, I've, so many psychics before I even started doing them were like, "Have you ever thought about doing, plant medicine because you have so many past lives working with past medicine. You've been a shaman." And like honestly, about 6 or 7 people, like
Yeah.
psychics, had like tuned in and been like, "Oh, past life doing this. Have you thought about doing this?" And because I'd stopped drinking, I was
Mhm.
like, "Well, no, I'm not going to do that because like I'm sober now." And eventually it happened so many times. I was just like, okay, maybe I'll put like the pull out to the universe to do that. And it ended up being like amazing, and I just clicked with the mushroom. I can only describe it as that, where it's like I just know it. I know the energy so well, and the first thing she said to me was welcome back. And it
Mm,
was like this crazy, honestly, every single time I do mushrooms, it's just like this, it's like a coming home. It's like a coming home. And it brought me to tears the first time that I did it because I just remembered her. And she was like, "We've worked together in so many lives. Like, you were what she called a great gatherer." She was like, "You went to gather information for like tribes and like would bring it back and would like show where the land was fertile, where to hunt and blah, blah, blah." And obviously I can't do that now, but
alien
she was
hunter
like,
gatherer out in the
yeah, yeah.
garden. I felt
But
so
that's the only one that I felt really, really pulled to do. I've had a couple of purges on that and some bad trips, which taught me a lot actually as well.
yeah,
But I haven't quite had like the full body yes for ayahuasca yet.
yeah.
And I don't know whether it's gonna come, honestly.
And you need to have that. Honestly, when people
Yeah.
ask me if I would do it again, I would say no, because
Mm.
like I don't need that. Like you have to have the pull. And I understand where plant medicines come in as a huge gateway. And everyone has their own journey with it. It's for me right now, it's not, there's no real pull there, no real pull for mushrooms, no real pull for anything else. And
Mm.
like anything, when it has to be in a ritualistic fashion, right? And
Exactly.
this is
Yes,
the
very
thing, and
true.
there's so many people that use mushrooms as like recreational drugs, and I'm like, it's like, it has to be for an
It's a different
intention.
energy.
Yeah, and like anything, when you're using any kind of medicine or drug, or you're opening up portals to
Yes. Yeah.
different energies. So it, like I've heard, I haven't seen this personally, but I've heard, and energetically what comes through to me is like that it also can be a portal for not great things to come through.
Very bad
So
things. Yeah.
it's very like, and there's so many things are being hijacked, right? Like the whole spiritual community, elements of it are being hijacked regardless. So
Yes.
it's just really about following your in like what is your true intention for doing these,
Oh,
and following the call if you have that call. Do you know what I
can
mean?
I
Like, what is that?
100%. Can I tell a story that
Yeah.
is like a wild story? It's not my story,
Okay.
but just everything that you're talking about around like how there is darkness associated with things, this story, and you've got to understand who it comes from, right? But just to understand the validity of this story. So, for background, I went on this shamanic practitioner training,
Mhm.
and in this training, it basically brings together a load of people, and most people, I was a pretty not normal person to be there because I'm not traditionally what spiritual looks like. I get my nails done, I do my hair, I do my makeup. Like I stood out. And there was one other guy that stood out. And he was like this real bro, like just the kind of guy that you would just never associate with being at one of these events. Like it was just people thought that about both me and him, and we only realized right at the very end, because we all actually had to share our projections about each other, which was painful and eye-opening, but that's a story for another day.
I want to hear it.
But he basically told this story because eventually towards the end, we were all like, why are you here? Like, this is clearly such edgy territory for you. And he was just he was very uncomfortable about talking about spirituality. He was very, there was like an element of fear. And there was one night where, so everyone, so often, if something had opened and hadn't shut properly, the two facilitators would basically do this really huge healing for people in this big hall. And so someone would go in and it would be like an individual healing. I had one and it went on for like 2.5 hours, and I like gave birth to shame. And it was simultaneously the most horrific thing I've ever done in my life with the most incredible thing I've ever done in my life. But I saw him one night going into the hall. And when he was in there, I was like directly opposite, like sleeping in the building opposite. And I could just hear his screams. And it was like pure fear, pure fear. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? There is something like terrifying that he's exercising. So that's a context. This is this guy. And he's just a trustworthy, truthful telling guy that wasn't meant to be there. And so by the end, we were like, why are you here? Like, tell us your story. And he was just like, all right, this is a bit of a scary story. So his background is, he's the kind of guy that will, he lives in the wilderness pretty much, and he'll take his van and he'll literally just set up camp somewhere in the forest, and he'll make a fire and he'll get out his tent and he'll sleep in the tent, and he just lives off the land, and he really likes to do that. And one night he was like driving home, but he realized he had a really long way to go. So he was driving through a really small town in Australia. I can't tell what the town is. I've forgotten it now, but he was like, it was a really, really small town. And I realized it was going to take me like a long time for me to get back. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go up this mountain and I'm going to find a place to camp. And he said, prior to this experience, he's never had any spiritual experiences. He hadn't believed, like he did not believe in spirit. And anyway, so he got halfway up this mountain and he heard a very strong voice being like, turn back. And he didn't listen to it. He was like, okay, weird. So just continued going up this mountain, and he got to the top and he basically put up his tent and everything, and he got in his tent to go to sleep. And then something started feeling a little bit off. So he got outside of his tent and he shone his torch into the trees. There's loads of trees around. He shone them all into the trees, and there's loads of trees around. And he was just like, there was nothing there. So got back in the tent. And then he got back in the tent and the temperature just plummeted. And he was like, it's suddenly freezing, like noticeably freezing. And so he gets out the tent again to look around, and he looks into where the trees were, and there's nothing. It's just darkness. And he was like, it was like a velvet rug of dark black wholeness had suddenly taken up all of the trees. And he just heard this voice inside his head that said, run. And so he just packed up his shit as fast as he could. He put everything back in the van, beelined down like the mountain. I was driving, and this blanket of darkness was just following him down the hill, just following him. And he was literally fifth gear, going as fast as he could, like 100K down this like tiny windy road. And he was like, I just knew that something bad was going to happen if that caught up with me. And he was like, I don't even want to think about what it was. Eventually he got into town, and he, terrified, went into this 24/7 like open motel thing, and he burst through the door, and he was just like, this just happened. He was out of breath explaining, and the woman just went, oh yeah, you don't go up to that mountain. That's where there's black magic. So there are Aboriginal people that basically cursed the land. And they cursed the land, and she was like, black magic exists. You may want to get yourself checked after this. And he was like, okay. After that point, everything started going wrong in his life. Everything. He lost his job. Him and his partner split up. Literally, his car like got teetotaled. He got bills out of nowhere. Suddenly he's in a load of debt. And he was like doing well before, and it was like, what the hell? He ended up going to the shaman, and the shaman, he walked into the room, and the shaman was just like, what have you let attach to you? What has happened? And he was just like, explained what happened. He was just like, you have some dark energy, but this is an initiation for you. The only way that you're going to stop all this darkness happen if you go through and down a shamanic path. So you need to learn to become a shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, are you fucking joking? But he was like, at this point, he was like, I'm willing to do whatever. So he decided to sign up to this shamanic thing that I went on. And literally the very next day, the money came back through. The car, randomly, the money for the car to get fixed suddenly came through. His partner reached back out, wants to get back with him. And he was like, so in all honesty, I don't know why I'm here. But what I do know is that if I wasn't here, my life would be chaos. And
Yeah.
so I've been led here because there's something here for me and I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
how wild is that?
That's so wild. And this is the thing, like attachments are real. I need to plug in my laptop because again, this is so wild. That was full. I've been having some crazy
Oh God.
electronic
Let's
stuff.
stage that shit.
It's just a lot of energy. That this is what it is. It's just a lot of energy here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're gonna sage ourselves after telling that story. Gillian, can you just do a sage for us, please?
Yes, I will absolutely do a clearing. Oh gosh. Um,
But yes,
yeah.
serious dark magic exists, basically. And I think it's like you don't believe it until one day you suddenly do. And it's like, oh, okay,
I've
this
had
is real.
energy attachments. This is what I do with my clients. My clients will come and they have attachments as well. I had a client that was, calling in who she thought was her spirit guide. But actually she wasn't defining who she was calling in or saying connected to divine love. So it was a free for all. So when she came to see me, I was like, oh, what have you been doing? What's going on? And she's like, I'm so fatigued and all the rest of it. And I'm like, girl,
Oh no.
this happens so much. Like I would probably say 99% of people are walking around the world with some
With
form of
attachments.
attachment and they just don't know it. And
I
it's
agree.
impacting their ability to think clearly, their emotions, everything. And
Hmm.
again, it's like the brighter we are, the more that we need to protect ourselves. But at the same time, it's like when we are also unconscious, we need to protect ourselves. Things like alcohol, drugs, absolute gateway. I say it's like you've just gone on holiday and left the keys to your house in your door.
So true.
Waters rights. It's like, and then no wonder the hangover is perpetuating feelings of anxiety, feelings of like shame, feelings of anger. It's all of these things that like these lower vibration entities and energies are feeding off.
They
And
feed off. Mm.
it's like, I don't want to scare people, but I'm like, this is just the reality that we live in?
Yeah. Like if you want to live the best life you can possibly live, protect yourself energetically because you just have no idea. There's even this very small thing that me and my partner do, and I do it after every single call. You'll know this little
Yeah.
technique, but it's just cutting the cords, and it's
Mm.
just literally cutting your cords before bed every morning, but like cutting your cords to other people so that other people's energy can't drain you. Because my God, does it drain you? Especially because you work with so many empaths as well. Like
Yeah.
when I don't do that, I can start to feel heavy and angry and blah blah blah. I'm like, no, this is mine. Like, where
Hmm.
does this come from?
Hmm.
You have a argument with someone at the traffic lights. That could be their energy,
Yeah.
coming straight back to you. So, yeah.
It is. It's something that I teach all of my clients because I was like, I've created a whole activation and meditation to ground, connect, clear, and protect. And I was like, guys, you need this. Do it every
Love
morning and
that.
every evening. Like I have to do it before and after every single client that I have because it's like when we're empathic, when we're sensitive, we just have to do it even if we're not healers, if you're coaches, whatever it is. I have one client that's she is in the caring profession and she was like, I wondered why I went from one client and I was really happy to leave her. And then on my way to the other client, I got like physical pains in my gut and a headache. And I just started getting like really fatigued. And then when I got to this client, she had all those symptoms. And I'm like, you are so clairsentient, girl. Like
Hmm.
you need this. So funnily
Yeah.
enough, the same one that had called in that attachment. But
Interesting. She's
yeah,
open.
so open. And this is the thing. It's like and this is what we normalize as well. For people that are so empathic and so intuitive, we normalize feeling all these feelings, like the ups and downs, the wave of emotions, the highs and lows, the moods, the illness, the pain. And actually, majority and half of it is not even ours. And this is
Mm.
like something that like I have to educate on because it was a huge awakening for me. I had
Mm.
normalized the inconsistency of how I felt. I was like, that's just how I am. And it's like, no, it's just because you're like very sensitive. Even
Yeah.
walking through the shopping mall, I've got to clear and protect myself.
Yeah. I
So I
love
get like
that.
blindness because I'm picking up
Mm,
energies.
wow.
Yeah,
Intense. That's intense.
it is intense. Yeah. So it's a wild ride.
Mm.
What are like some of the takeaways, I suppose, for anyone that's listening around the things that you do every day or things that you've implemented into your life that from a spiritual perspective that have allowed you to one become the person that you are today, two to create the business and with the impact that you have today supporting most amazing other leaders because that's what you're here to do. Like what has been like fundamental things that you either think everyone should be doing or that have really shifted your ability to to do the thing that you're doing.
Okay, great question. I breath work has been a really new one that's really come in, but somatic work, I'll say. I think everyone from a spiritual perspective should be doing somatic work because um your connection to spirit, and this is like another very small story that I'll tell, but when I was on this shamanic practitioner training, I joined because I was like, I want to talk to aliens. Like I love aliens. And I was like, I just want to connect up there. And at one stage, we were doing this exercise of like connecting to the land and ancestors of the land. And so, you go into like ceremony and you say your respect and you ask for permission to be there. And then you ask whether there's any messages that you want to share. And this ancestor of the land came down and really, really big guy. And he was just like stomping his foot on the ground. And he was just like, showed me this pillar of light. And he was like, if you want to connect up there, if you want to connect to spirit, you have to connect down here. And it was like connected to the ground. And he was like dancing. And he started saying wagga wagga, wagga wagga, wagga wagga. And I was like, yeah, wagga wagga. Like, what's that? And just got this very strong sense of like my abilities to connect spiritually are in my body. And if I'm not connected to my body, I'm going to struggle to connect up there. And so when I came out of that, I Googled what Wagga Wagga meant. And in the Aboriginal language that of the locale that I was in, it meant dance.
Mm.
And one of the definitions meant dance, which is just, and it's so funny because that whole trip that I was there, people were like, are you a dancer? Oh my God, you look like a dancer today. Do you do dance? And it like, I never get that comment. And so I was like, there's something in this for me to look at, like something about dance and movement and somatic movement is meant to be a part of something that I'm doing. But I think more than anything, it was just like connecting to my body, allowing myself to somatically release. And it was then that a lot of my spiritual gifts really cracked open, was when I started integrating the body. So I think that's one thing paired on top with something like tarot for like introspection. It's the some of my wildest readings have been through tarot. And it's just such an incredible tool. Even if you don't believe it's spirit, like to get to know yourself on a subconscious level, I think is a really powerful tool. I do that every single day. So I do somatic work every day and I do tarot every single day. And I just make sure that I give myself plenty of space because intuition, listening to spirit, it happens in silence. It doesn't happen in the movement. And so, I have a 7-figure business which can get busy. So it's like a rule for myself that I have a lot of time and space to connect with spirit, to connect with God, to connect with my spiritual team, to connect to my body so that I can be a clearer vessel for like channeling and programs and be a better coach and facilitator. I think it's all connected. So yeah, that would probably be it.
Absolutely. Amazing. And is there anything that you want to share with my audience around what you're doing, what's coming up next for you? Any exciting projects?
Yeah. So the main thing is if anyone wants to learn how to sell high end, we do that in the house where I teach marketing and content. And I have a lot of different programs that range from brand content all the way through to feminine authority manifestation school, which is all about manifestation. But mainly just my podcast. The Hayley Lloyd Show is where I hang out. And that's sort of like the main place to like get to know me if you're interested. But if you're on the spiritual path, you're in the right place with Gillian because this is the place that you're going to need to be to like really crack open those spiritual gifts. So
Mm.
yeah, that's probably where you can find me. And at Hayley June Lloyd on Instagram. I'll give you all of the links. But yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll put everything in the show notes below. But thank you
Amazing.
so much. I mean, I could like talk to you for hours on this. I was
I
like, I'm
know, me too.
counting your offers, and I mean, maybe that's another one, guys. But yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely like spirituality and business and that mix because there's so much there.
So much there. Yeah, 100%.
And
Yeah,
business, if you run your own business, it's like the DNA of yourself is in your business, and it is a spiritual journey. It is
exactly.
initiation because
Yeah,
it's your purpose and to create prosperity. It's like this thing, and this is why I've created, I call it the three P's. It's to discover your purpose, you need to awaken your spiritual gifts and your intuition
yeah,
to then also heal the relationship with yourself and others, to then find your abundance and prosperity by being of service to the world the way that you're meant to. Because, like you said
yeah.
before, it's like everyone is here on a very unique spiritual mission. They
Mm,
have their unique gifts, their unique talents, their unique purpose, and they're meant to share it with their own unique expression and actually to make a difference in the world, to make an impact, whether that's with humans, animals, like the land, whatever it is, we're here to do some good work that's
yeah,
unique to us. So,
exactly. So
yay.
good. Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing to chat.
No, amazing. Thank you so much. I know you've had a super busy day. So yeah, I really appreciate your time and the spiritual chat. I could, as I
Yeah.
said, I could talk forever.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. It's been amazing. I can't wait to listen, re-listen.
Sweet to you.